Okay, part 2 of picking up a dropped knit stitch. So say you were making a shirt or a sweater or a blanket, and when you got to the end, you counted your row like you should be counting, and you realize 100 stitches back, you dropped that stitch. Well, you're not going to unknit back to 100 stitches. So what I like to do is find the stitch that I dropped, and you can see it's unraveled 2 stitches now. And I like to take a stitch holder or a stitch marker, whatever you'd like to call it, and I loop it in there and I close it. That way it's not going to undo any further past that point. Then I go ahead and I pick back up and continue knitting until I get to that spot. And I have problems with my hands. I have some autoimmune problems and I'm losing the use of my hands. So I like these square needles. They're this brand is Knitter's Pride. There's a few brands out there, but the Knitter's Pride ones seem to be my favorite. Just a little FYI. So I'm gonna knit up to the spot where I dropped the stitch. Okay. This is where I dropped the stitch. Now I'm gonna fix it. So I'm going to give a little tug, give me a little extra room on this. I'm going to undo the stitch marker. I'm going to take my little crochet needle that you can get in the knitting section. I'm going to go ahead and stick it through. And I'm going to pull this one through. There's the first stitch. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab the next stitch and I'm going to pull it through, and I'm going to grab this stitch and I'm going to pull it through. Now this is a stitch that goes back on the needle. Oops, trying to stay in frame and do this so I can see. So that goes back on the needle, and now you can continue knitting. Again, I put that back on the needle twisted. So I'm going to untwist it by pulling it off with my knitting needle, and I'm going to put it back on, and then I'm going to go ahead and continue knitting as I did. Now some people might say, oh, what happens if you drop a purl stitch? Well, here's purl stitches in between my knitted stitches. I like to just flip it over, and the back is your knit stitch. So you're going to pick it up the same way I just showed you, just from the opposite side. And that seems to make things go a little bit easier for my brain. But it's just a pattern too. If you look at it, you can see the pattern and how it's done, and you're able to pick stitches up. I hope this has helped somebody. I kind of learned this part on my own as far as putting the stitch marker in. Also, if you guys aren't using stitch markers, you should be. It makes things a lot easier to count if you have a really large project, and maybe you put them in every 50 stitches. 4, 5, 6, 7. So if this was 50 stitches, maybe you would go ahead and put a stitch marker here, so you know that there was 50 stitches, and then continue on, and then the next 50 stitches, and that way it makes it a little bit easier to count in between your stitches. Also, when you do knits and purls and different designs, cable stitches, it's great to use stitch markers. I can't imagine not using them. It just makes my life a lot easier and more enjoyable, so you're not having to count and be frustrated trying to count straight 200 stitches. You have it marked out in 50s, and make sure that there's 50 in each set, and just remember to move them up the next time. You're going to just slip it onto your needle when you get to the next stitch, when you get to here on the next round. That's really simple. If you guys have any other questions or want me to try to do any other videos to help you out, let me know. Thank you.